Hello, my name is Stephen Mankos, and I'll be presenting on the Office of Housing and Residential Life, and analyzing the key concepts and theories of which this organization presents, and also a kind of dynamic of how its employees and its residents work. First off, the Residential Life community was built in 1972, and it only started off with 8 buildings. It also started off with 10 original Residential Life students or staff, and oversaw a maximum of 400 students working there and living there in the community. So what the Res Life program is about is it enhances students' living and learning capabilities through their residential halls or dormitories. Okay, go to the next slide. So what I saw in this aspect was I compared its human relations theory and mostly kind of Hertzberg's hygiene theory. Analyzing its employees, I only saw that the way that the employees got paid wasn't necessarily to their benefit. It kind of, they felt like their payment wasn't really motivating, and I felt like Hertzberg was a perfect identity because if you're not paid, you don't really have any motivation to do the job, as well as other factors needed. So in kind of the sense, they don't get paid that much. They do get room and board, but it feels to them it wasn't enough. And then I kind of headed to scientific management, which I took this quote saying, management alone should articulate the best way to do a task and the rules that govern work. But then I asked myself, but why must they kind of articulate this way that it needs to work? In our Res Life communities, we're taught that creativity, innovation, and a lot of different aspects kind of highlight what we are as Res Life staff and members. So then, in this company, they hire people to do these jobs, but not necessarily the people that can just do any other day job. They hire people with this already experience going in and this kind of a talent and skills. And then they kind of push them to articulate it their own way and kind of do it their own way, but still within a slight use process. And then this definitely brings me up into the aspect of culture. And I definitely took this quote from Marcus Gravy saying that people without the knowledge of his past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without its roots. And this kind of hit me deeply because in this area we deal with residents, and especially since we're a commuter school, we deal with a high influx of international students. And we definitely have to hit these areas where our employees are definitely comfortable with helping these international students and kind of recognizing where they come from and how to kind of approach them in certain situations. I have a short video clip that'll kind of estimate show you how the culture is. It's down here down there in Google Chrome. So this is kind of going to show you how what the CSUSB Res Life program is all about. So you go to the next slide. So in this culture, this unique culture, you kind of bring up the aspect of our communication issues in this specific department. And I kind of bring up the networks that the Res Life program issues, which involve like upward and downward communication. And what I found was that this organization did have a chain of command starting with our residents that we serve, our residential assistants that serve them, and then so on to hall coordinator, area coordinator, assistant director, and then the director of our Res Life program. And what I found is that this network, in the way it had its chain of command, its formal chain of command, it's that it's very informal in a sense, because a lot of these different places will start jumping to different communication bound, and they'll actually go around the chain of command and start talking to its other individual departments. And this kind of came back to the point of feedback and criticism. To our residents, we always pass out many different surveys, kind of evaluating the quality that we display and how the quality of our RAs may display in our employees and stuff. But then it gets to a point where we get to feedback from our own staff and our employees. And then it comes across to, is it professional or is it personal? And I wanted to highlight on this because if it ends up becoming personal feedback, then it can either be bad or maybe be good. But if it may destroy the company, if it's personal feedback, it could hurt the company and it could hurt the organization and create a bad name, bad image. Then if we kind of model a professional image or a professional feedback, then this will create more and more it'll create better quality instruction for the future. And then I also came across crisis communication. And with crisis communication, this department and organization teams up with many different departments and organizations on the university to combat different crises that it may have, as well as come up with its own organizational strategy in its own house. Go to the next slide. In housing and residential life, we have, since I said it was a big commuter school, we have a lot of national students and people from international other institutions and stuff. So then this creates our cultural diversity. Since we have so many international students, what kind of model are we displaying and how are we easing them into our culture as well? So this kind of made me reflect on how is our culture, in a sense, our own, and how are we viewed as Americans and as people from the United States? What is our brand and our image? And I saw this as, in a couple of people I saw, like, we're kind of personal human beings. We are wanting self-driving, self-goals. We don't really look at it as the big institution. We don't look for improvement into the company. We look for improvement into ourselves. And this organization kind of models that, where they try to improve individuals, but also improve themselves. And this comes into cultural barriers, where we got to see what barriers we present to international students and how can we kind of push those aside and introduce them and welcome them into the American and United States culture. We can go to the next slide. So this brings me to our ethics. What do we view ourselves and how are our ethics as a society and as an organization? First, I saw that our organization promotes strategic ambiguity in the sense where it promotes unified diversity, organizational change, creativity, and it also preserves privileged positions. But in a sense, if we have too much strategic ambiguity, it creates an atmosphere where it's distrusting and disloyal, and it kind of pursues or preserves in-groups and out-groups. And then those out-groups will kind of come back and kind of hurt the company image, and they'll kind of disconnect themselves from the whole of the organization. So then this kind of brings up a good topic of utilitarianism, where it's the better of all is better than the few. So if we can like kind of get majority of everyone happy, then it doesn't really matter about the other few. But then this kind of raises an interesting question, whether this creates the out-group, and then what happens to this out-group? What do they do? And then I found this interesting other concept of the normalization of deviance, deviating from the normal behavior, which when this out-group becomes kind of frustrated with the organization not really hearing them, it creates this distrust and disloyalty of the organization, and these people do not want to act with the company. So then we can go to the next slide. So then where is the Res Life program today? The Res Life program oversees 1,500 residents, has a staff of over 50 Res Life employees, oversees 16 different residential buildings, and has successfully developed 8 living learning communities. In the beginning, we saw that it only has 8 buildings, but then doubled it in recent times. And then we to make the recommendation short, we see that the company needs to improve on its professional and personal dealing with its relationship with its employees and as well as its upper management. And there's need to be better communication between upper management and then lower management. And this concludes my presentation.